Welcome to Module 4. If you've come this far, you've already done some important work. In the first three modules, we explored who you are, your strengths, your story, your rights, your skills, and finally, you created a practical plan for the next 6 months. Those modules were largely about what to do. This module is a little different. This isn't about building another plan. It's about something I've learned over many years and honestly something I wish someone had spoken to me about much earlier. You see, making a plan and living that plan are two very different things. Life doesn't always move in a straight line. Sometimes you do everything right and things still don't work out the way you expected. You may face rejection. You may have to wait longer than you imagined. You may lose confidence for a while. Or you may finally get the opportunity you've been waiting for, only to realize that a whole new set of challenges has just begun. Everything we'll discuss in this module comes from those experiences. I'm not sharing them because I have all the answers. I'm sharing them because I've traveled this road before. Think of this module as someone walking a little ahead of you on the same road, pointing at a few turns and saying, "This part might feel difficult. This helped me. Maybe it helps you too." I don't know exactly what your journey will look like, but if I can leave behind a few signboards along the way, perhaps your journey feels a little less lonely. That's what this module is about. At the end of the last module, you created your own 6-month plan. Maybe you decided to learn a new skill. Maybe you planned to apply for jobs or internships. Maybe you wanted to improve your communication, build your network, or become more confident in advocating for yourself. Whatever your plan looks like, that's a meaningful achievement. But here's something I've realized over the years. A plan gives us direction. It doesn't guarantee that the road ahead will be smooth. There will be days when things move exactly as planned, and there will be days when nothing seems to move at all. That doesn't mean your plan was wrong. It simply means you're now living in the real world, where delays, uncertainty, health challenges, inaccessible systems, and unexpected setbacks are all part of the journey. This module isn't here to make those challenges disappear. It's here to help you travel through them without losing yourself. I think one of the biggest misconceptions we grow up with is that success looks like a straight line. You make a plan, you work hard, you succeed. Simple. But very few lives actually unfold like that. Mine certainly didn't. When I look back now, I can clearly see the pattern. There were moments of progress, then rejection, then learning, then waiting, then trying again, then another setback, then another opportunity. At that time, I couldn't see the pattern. I was simply living through each day. It's only in retrospect that the journey starts making sense. That's why I want to tell you this today. If your journey feels messy right now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're on the wrong path. It may simply mean you're on a real one. Try not to measure your life by one interview, one exam, one application, or one difficult week. Careers, confidence, and even self-belief are usually built through many ordinary days, not one extraordinary moment. And if your journey doesn't look like a straight line, you're in good company. At this point in the course, some of you may still be looking for your first opportunity. Maybe you're applying for jobs, internships, college admissions, or preparing for interviews. And some of you may already have received that first opportunity. On the surface, those two journeys look very different. One person is wondering, will anyone give me a chance? The other is wondering, can I actually do this? But over the years, I've realized something interesting. Both journeys demand the same skill, the ability to keep going when you don't have all the answers. Whether you're waiting for someone to say yes, or you've already heard yes, and now you're figuring things out, you'll experience uncertainty. You'll question yourself. You'll have good days, you'll have difficult days. So whichever road you're on today, this module is for you. Because learning how to stay with yourself during uncertainty is a skill that will serve you throughout your life. not just while looking for. Let me share something from my own journey. There was an organization I really wanted to work for. I prepared for the interview, I went in hopeful, and I wasn't selected. Naturally, I was disappointed. But life moved on, and so did I. Over the next 1 or 2 years, I attended several more interviews with different organizations. Again, I wasn't selected. And then again. Looking back now, I realized something I couldn't see then. Every rejection took away a little bit of my enthusiasm. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to stop trying. It happened much more quietly than that. I simply noticed that I wasn't as excited to prepare for the next interview. I wasn't as hopeful. Somewhere inside, I had started expecting disappointment before anything had even happened. And that's a very difficult place to be. Then, sometime later, another opportunity came up with that same organization where I had first been rejected. I interviewed again. This time, I was selected. I've now spent nearly 2 decades there. When I look back today, I don't remember those rejections with sadness. But I also don't dismiss them, because they were real, they hurt, and they shaped me. If there's one thing I learned from that period, it's this. A rejection is an event. It is not your identity. Sometimes, it's just one chapter in a much longer story. And while you're living that chapter, you don't yet know how the rest of the story will unfold. One of the most useful things I've learned, both through experience and through studying psychology, is that our mind is constantly creating stories. Something happens, and almost instantly, our mind starts explaining what that event means. For example, the fact might be, I wasn't selected, but the story quickly becomes, maybe I'm not good enough. Or, the fact might be, I need more experience, but the story becomes, I'll always struggle because of my disability. Notice the difference. The facts are real. We shouldn't deny them. If you weren't selected, you weren't selected. If you need to improve a skill, then that's something worth working on. But the stories, those deserve to be questioned, because many of them aren't facts at all. They're conclusions we've reached while we're feeling hurt. And hurt has a way of making tomorrow look much darker than it really is. So the next time something difficult happens, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what are the facts? And then ask, what story am I adding on top of those facts? That one question has helped me many times, and I hope, over time, it becomes useful for you. Whenever something doesn't go our way, our mind immediately starts asking questions. Unfortunately, those questions are often not very helpful. Questions like, why does this always happen to me? What is wrong with me? Why is everyone else moving ahead? The problem isn't that these questions are wrong. They're human. I've asked them too. But I've also realized something. The questions we ask ourselves shape the direction our mind takes. If I keep asking, why me? My mind keeps searching for reasons to feel helpless. But if I ask, what can I learn from this? Or, what's one thing I can improve? Or, who can help me see what I'm missing? Then my mind starts looking for possibilities instead of proof that I failed. Notice, I'm not saying that these questions make disappointment disappear. They don't. If you've been rejected, you'll still feel disappointed. If something hurts, it hurts. But these questions give that disappointment somewhere to go. Instead of becoming a wall, it slowly becomes a stepping stone. And sometimes, that's all we need. Just enough movement to take the next step. This is probably the biggest lesson I want to leave you with from this entire module. People often say, stay motivated. But here's the truth. Motivation comes and goes. There were days when I didn't feel motivated at all. After a few rejections, after waiting, after feeling that nothing was changing, I didn't wake up every morning feeling positive. I simply didn't. And I think it's important to say that honestly. Because if you're waiting for motivation to show up every day, you'll spend a lot of time waiting. Instead, I learned to think differently. I stopped asking, how do I stay motivated? And started asking, how do I protect my fuel? Fuel is different. Fuel is what helps you get through an ordinary Tuesday. It's what carries you through a difficult week. It's what helps you show up again after disappointment. Motivation is a feeling. Fuel is something you build and protect. That's why I use this metaphor. Because life isn't won by people who feel motivated every day. It's lived by people who learn how to take care of themselves well enough to continue. When I say fuel, I don't mean just taking a break or watching a movie. I've realized that we all need different kinds of fuel. Sometimes what we're lacking isn't motivation at all. We're simply running low in one part of our lives. The first is physical fuel. Am I sleeping enough? Am I eating properly? Am I giving my body the rest it needs? Then comes emotional fuel. Who are the people I can be myself with? Who can I call without pretending that everything is okay? Sometimes emotional fuel comes from family. Sometimes from one good friend. Sometimes from a mentor. And sometimes, if you're anything like me, it comes from a dog who has absolutely no idea what kind of day you've had. Zoe has no idea whether I've had a good meeting or a difficult one. She just wants to play. And strangely enough, that reminds me that life is bigger than whatever happened that day. Then there's mental fuel. Reading, writing, learning something new, sitting quietly, praying or meditating if that's meaningful to you. Anything that gives your mind a little space to breathe. And finally, meaning and purpose. Why am I doing all this? What kind of life am I trying to build? Who benefits if I keep going? There was a time in my life when I thought happiness came from achieving the next goal. But over the years, I've realized that what keeps us going isn't happiness. It's meaning. Meaning gives us a reason to wake up even when life isn't particularly exciting. So don't just ask yourself, how do I stay motivated? Ask yourself, which kind of fuel am I running low on today? Sometimes the answer isn't to work harder. Sometimes it's simply to refill the right tank. If I ask you what the hardest part of building a career is, many of you might say interviews, exams, or getting selected. But for me, one of the hardest parts has always been waiting. Waiting for an email, waiting for interview results, waiting to hear back after you've given your best, waiting for admissions, waiting for approvals, waiting for life to move. And I think, for many of us with disabilities, waiting becomes an even bigger part of life. Sometimes we're waiting for an assistive device. Sometimes we're waiting for medical appointments. Sometimes we're waiting for systems to become accessible. Sometimes we're simply waiting for someone to give us a chance. Here's what I learned. Waiting is not empty time. It is still your life. If we pause our entire life until one email arrives, weeks become months. Months become years. So while you're waiting, keep one routine alive. Learn one new thing. Stay connected with people. Apply again. Read. Rest. Live. Don't let waiting become your identity. Let it become one chapter in your journey. There is something I wish more people talked about. Sometimes, after a few disappointments, you don't become sad. You become tired. Not physically, mentally. You don't stop believing in your dream. You just stop feeling excited about it. I remember going through phases like that. I still knew what I wanted. I still wanted to build my career. But after repeated rejections, I noticed that I wasn't looking forward to the next application or the next interview in the same way. It wasn't because I had become lazy. It wasn't because I had given up. I was simply emotionally exhausted. Looking back today, I understand what was happening. At that time, I didn't. I just knew that something felt different. That's why I want to tell you something very important. On difficult days, don't try to fix your entire life. Don't force yourself to become positive. Don't feel guilty because gratitude isn't coming naturally today. Instead, make today smaller. Eat something nourishing. Sleep if you're tired. Call someone who makes you feel safe. Listen to music. Spend time with your pet. Go outside if you can. Pray or meditate if that helps you. Or simply finish one small task. That's enough. This isn't about avoiding your problems. It's about protecting the energy you'll need to face them tomorrow. Some days, surviving the day is the achievement. And that's okay. Let's now imagine something wonderful happens. You receive the email you've been waiting for. You get selected. You finally receive the opportunity you've worked so hard for. It feels amazing for a while. And then something unexpected happens. A different kind of nervousness appears. Until yesterday, the question was, will anyone choose me? Today, the question becomes, can I actually do this? I think many people believe that confidence arrives the day we succeed. In my experience, it doesn't. Success doesn't remove uncertainty. It simply changes the questions we're asking ourselves. If you're about to begin your first job, your first internship, your first college program, or any new chapter in life, I want you to know this feeling is completely normal. You're not feeling nervous because you don't belong. You're feeling nervous because you're stepping into something you've never done before. And that's exactly what growth feels. Let's stay with that moment for a minute. Imagine you've received the call or the email. You got selected. After weeks, maybe months, maybe even years, someone finally says yes. It's a beautiful feeling. You celebrate. Your family celebrates. Friends are happy for you. And then, quietly, another thought enters your mind. Now what? Until yesterday, your biggest challenge was getting an opportunity. Today, your biggest challenge is making the most of it. That's a very different journey. And I want to tell you something that I wish someone had told me. Just because you've been selected doesn't mean you'll suddenly feel confident. It doesn't mean you'll know everything. It doesn't mean all your fears disappear overnight. They don't. They simply change their shape. That's completely normal. In fact, I think it's a sign that you're stepping into something meaningful. Growth rarely feels comfortable in the beginning. I still remember my first day at work. Looking back today, it almost makes me smile. But on that morning, I was nervous, really nervous. I knew where I had to report. I knew what time I had to reach. Beyond that, I didn't know much. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the systems. I didn't know how I would manage everything. Like many of us with disabilities, I was also thinking about practical things. Will the building work for me? Will I need help? Will I be able to manage independently? There were so many questions. Then somewhere along the way, I had a very simple thought. I don't have to solve my entire career today. I only have to get through today. That's it. One conversation, one introduction, one task, one meeting, one question at a time. Looking back now, I realize something else. Nobody expected me to know everything on my first day. I was the one putting that pressure on myself. Everyone else expected a newcomer. Only I expected an expert. And that's such an unfair expectation to place on ourselves. So if you're about to begin something new, whether it's your first job, your first internship, your first day in college, remember this. Your only responsibility. One habit has helped me throughout my career. Whenever life starts feeling overwhelming, I make the timeline smaller. I stop thinking about 5 years. I stop thinking about 10 years. I stop asking, will I succeed? Instead, I ask, what does today need from me? Sometimes the answer is preparing for one interview. Sometimes it's learning one new skill. Sometimes it's sending one application. Sometimes it's asking one question. Sometimes it's simply getting enough rest so that tomorrow I can begin again. Careers aren't built in giant moments. When you look back after 10 or 20 years, it may look like one continuous journey. But while you're living it, it happens one ordinary day at a time. One conversation, one mistake, one lesson, one relationship, one opportunity. We often underestimate what small, consistent days can become. We keep looking for one life-changing moment. But most meaningful careers aren't built that way. They're built through hundreds of ordinary days that nobody applauds. So whenever the future starts feeling too big, bring yourself back to today. Today is usually something you can handle. And if you keep handling enough todays, one day you'll look back and realize you built a life you once thought was impossible. Before we close this module, there's one more thought I'd like to leave you with. Sometimes, one of the hardest parts of any journey is that you can't see your own progress. You keep showing up, you keep learning, you keep trying, and yet, it feels like nothing is changing. I felt that too. There were phases in my life when I genuinely wondered, am I actually moving forward? Because nothing on the outside seemed very different. But here's what I understand today that I didn't understand then. Not all progress is immediately visible. Confidence grows quietly. Experience grows quietly. Better judgment grows quietly. The way you respond to difficult situations changes quietly. Even your ability to recover from disappointment becomes stronger without you noticing it. And then one day, someone asks you a difficult question, or you're faced with a challenge, and you respond differently than you would have a year ago. That's when you realize something has changed. You have changed. Growth often happens long before we recognize it. So if today it feels like nothing is happening, don't be too quick to judge your journey. Some of the most important progress happens beneath the surface. Throughout this module, we've spoken about many ideas: rejection, waiting, recovery, starting something new, protecting your fuel. Now I'd like you to pause for a few minutes and make this personal. This isn't an assignment. No one is going to grade it. This is simply a conversation with yourself. Think about the questions in front of you. When I feel discouraged, what usually helps me? Who are the people I can reach out to without pretending that everything is okay? What routines help me come back to myself? And finally, what's one small step I can take when life feels overwhelming? Don't try to write perfect answers. Write honest ones. Because the purpose of this page isn't today. The purpose of this page is that one difficult day, maybe weeks or months from now, when you need a reminder of what helps you keep going. I hope you'll come back to it then. As we come to the end of this module, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Throughout these 4 modules, we've spoken about understanding yourself, accepting your story, building skills, knowing your rights, creating a plan, and now, learning how to protect the energy you'll need to live that plan. If there's one thing I hope stays with you after today's session, it's this. Life isn't asking you to have everything figured out. It's asking you to keep showing up. Not perfectly, consistently. There will be days when you feel confident. There will be days when you don't. There will be days when things work out. And there will be days when they don't. None of those days by themselves define your future. They are simply days. Your story will be written across hundreds of them. You know, when I look back today, I don't remember every interview. I don't remember every rejection. I don't remember every difficult day. What I remember is that somehow, I kept taking the next step. Sometimes confidently, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes with excitement, sometimes simply because I knew I had to. And maybe that's what this module has really been about. Not teaching you how to never feel tired, not teaching you how to never feel disappointed, but reminding you that those moments don't mean your journey has stopped. Before we meet again in the final module, I'd like to leave you with an image. When I was creating this course, I didn't think of myself as someone standing on a stage giving advice. I thought of myself as someone who's been walking on this road for a while. A road with unexpected turns, difficult climbs, beautiful moments, and days when I wasn't sure what was around the next corner. I can't walk this road for you, and I wouldn't want to, because your journey will become your own story. But if I can leave behind a few signboards, a few milestones, maybe a light in one or two darker stretches of the road, then perhaps your journey becomes just a little less lonely than mine sometimes felt. That's all this module has tried to do. Thank you for trusting me with this part of your journey. In our final module, we'll bring everything together and talk about what it truly means to continue thriving long after this course comes to an end.